Businessworld Live. I'm Dani Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day, Tuesday. Fuel prices climbed for the 11th straight week, and this latest round of increase marks the biggest oil price hike in over a decade.
With pump prices rising every week in the past few months, labor groups are now seeking a 470 peso wage hike in Metro Manila.
Yet another bloodbath at the local bourse. The bellwether index dives below the 6,900 level as investors continue to assess the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war.
But Bangko Sentral Governor Ben Diokno is taking a less pessimistic stance, saying limited economic links and geographic distance could insulate the Philippine economy from the war in Eastern Europe. We begin our broadcast with fuel prices rising for the 11th straight week.
Today's price adjustment also marks the biggest oil price hike that the country has seen in more than a decade. Oil companies have increased gasoline prices by 7 pesos and 10 centavos per liter, while diesel prices are up by a whopping 13 pesos and 15 centavos a liter. The Energy Department says the massive increase is a result of ongoing global geopolitical tensions. The agency expects domestic pump prices to climb further in the coming weeks.
Dahil lang po sa balita na binan na po yung mga oil import and export ng Russia. Ibig sabihin, dahil po sa pangyayaring yon, nag-react na po yung merkado, tumaas na po kagad, sumipa po ang presyo.
And as fuel prices continue to soar, labor groups are now seeking an increase in the daily wages in Metro Manila. The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines filed a petition seeking a 470 peso daily minimum wage increase in the NCR, bringing the total to 1,007 pesos. Now, aside from the rising fuel costs, TUCP cited hunger, malnutrition, and increased prices of basic commodities as reasons behind this petition. The TUCP is calling on the government to consider the request as no wage hike has been implemented since the 25 peso increase in basic pay granted 4 years ago.
Alam niyo po, yung actual petition dapat 710. Kaya hahabulin pa namin yan when times are better. Ito po ay actual compromise amount, itong 470.
Local retailers say the incessant fuel price hikes are also weighing in on recovery prospects of the sector. They say that there are still a lot of uncertainties, especially with the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war and its effect on oil prices, but they remain optimistic since mobility restrictions have been eased in the metro. Trade Secretary Mon Lopez said that the shift to Alert Level 1 has helped bring back the crowds, especially on weekends. But Lopez added that it is still hard to predict the impact of the high fuel prices on consumer traffic in retail shops. Now, to better grasp how the series of oil price hikes is affecting the retail sector, we have on the show Stephen Kua, President of the Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association. Good morning, sir. Stephen, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Morning, Jess, Danny.
Okay, sir, again, another round of price hikes. This one, the biggest in over a decade. We're talking 13 pesos as much for diesel. Have prices of goods already risen up due to the series of price hikes here? And should we expect more increases in the coming weeks, and which products and by how much?
Yeah, we are hoping this will not turn into, spiraling inflation, no? Kasi yun na nga eh. Just when the economy just opened up, no, Alert Level 1 na tayo and all. Tapos biglang ito na naman, waiting for foot traffic to enter the retail outlets, biglang naman tayo ng rising prices, no? We're hoping that, this won't be a continuous thing, no? Kasi 11th straight week na nga nagtaas ang petrolyo. It will affect everything else, no? What has gone up really, mataas ang tinaas ng presyo, are the imported items, no?
Okay.
Now, when you say imported items, some are repacked here, recanned here, while others are hook, line, and sinker. The whole thing is imported now, which comes in. All of these, the prices of all these items have all gone up because not just because of the price of world prices of oil, but also because of shipping rates, no, which has gone up, skyrocketed, no, because of what's happening between Russia and Ukraine.
Sir, the oil prices, so for instance, gasoline up 51% since those hiking happened, diesel up by more than 70%. What percentage of the cost of supermarkets and the cost of goods is fuel, and to what extent are they hedged in terms of these costs? Is this a direct increase? Pag tumataas ng 50%, tataas rin ng, the component price will be reflected and passed on to consumers, or do supermarkets take a hit before this is passed on?
Well, ang immediate effect niyan is for those na araw-araw or every other day nagde-deliver. Ito yung mga palengke, no? We're talking meat, fresh produce, fruits, vegetables, no? Kasi hindi naman pwedeng matagalan yan dahil perishable items yan, di ba? So, yung nagde-deliver araw-araw, talagang immediate hit on them. That's why prices of those items,
Okay.
we can expect if they go up. Pero for those items na hindi naman manufactured, no? You have to ask the manufacturers. Pero for example, the Cancer Sardines Association of the Philippines, no? Nabanggit nga nila, I think gasoline is, sabi nila, 60%. Fuel is 60% of their cost.
Okay.
And out of the 60%, I think it's around ilang percent? 30% ba? Of the cost of delivery ng kanilang yung cost nila, no? Cost component, no? So malaki daw in their case, okay? Now, I don't know about the other manufacturers, no? You'll have to ask them. Pero how it affects us? Well, once manufacturers increase their prices, no? They pass it on to the distributors, and most supermarkets order from distributors except for the major chains, no? Retail chains, no? Then, the distributors will have to pass it on to us, and so on and so forth down the line to the consumer.
Sir, on the reverse, if bumaba ngayong oil prices, which we are hoping to happen should these stocks continue, how quickly will the consumer feel a reprieve na talagang bababa naman yung presyo right away? Do you envision this happening, na this is a temporary spike? And can you assure consumers that, immediately after these concerns are eased and the oil prices are go down, that pati yung bilihin bababa na?
Yeah. Consumers always ask, bakit ang gasolina akyat baba? Bakit bilihin sa supermarkets
Tama.
umakyat, hindi na
Hindi
bumaba,
naman bumababa.
di ba? Saan mapupunta yan? Langit? Well, bumaba ng presyo ng supermarket items. Okay? How is that done? It's normally through premiums, bundling, buy one, take one, buy three, free one item, buy four, less 20% or less 20 pesos, example. So that way, bumaba ang presyo, no? But you don't feel it like nakikita sa shelf mismo na bumaba yung presyo. Kahapon, 1 peso, today, 95 centavos. Hindi ganun ang pagbaba ng presyo, no? So it comes in the form of a temporary relief through discounted items.
Okay, Sir Steven, I just want to follow up on an answer that you had earlier. Yung imported goods, mataas yung presyo. Can we get more specifics, which particular products, and gaano kataas na yung increase?
Well, an increase has gone up by around 10 to 18% for these items, not the mga repacked imported goods, no? There are brands that you see in a lot of categories, no? From corn to milk cream, no? To so mga ginagamit sa mga home industries, no? For baking, for cooking, no? So most of them are not directly for immediate use, okay? So a lot of them are tomatoes, canned tomatoes, no? Canned peas, no? So these are items. The problem with us long term is we don't develop our local industries, food industries. So we rely on imports. This is what happens when you rely on imports. At may gera, may geopolitical tension, di ba? Tatamaan tayo, di ba? Kasi supply is, is a problem, di ba? Whereas if we rely partly on local produce and local manufactured goods, then, medyo masustain natin ang ating growth at hindi tayo nagkakaproblema ng sourcing, no? Problem is, we rely on imports. So, hopefully the next few presidents, no, the next few administrations will develop our local industries then, so that meron naman tayong asahan locally. Imagine we import rice, we import sugar, di ba? Dapat sustainable tayo on our own.
Now, Sir, of course, all these things happen at a time when restrictions have eased in Metro Manila and several other areas in the country at alert level 1. So question now is, how is that affecting itong recent price hikes? How is that affecting consumer behavior? Have we seen at least foot traffic somehow increasing as well over the past few weeks?
Well, the increase in foot traffic hasn't been felt by many supermarkets yet. No? The malls, the restaurants, ang tao medyo sabik na, no? Magkita-kita, no? Maybe some of the churches, no? Well, of course, campaign rallies, no? And gas stations, no? Nagpupunta tao doon kasi nagtataas ang bilihin ng ang presyo ng petrolyo, no? Pero yung supermarkets, retailers, hindi pa felt yung foot traffic as expected, no? I guess it's a slow transition back to hopefully not where we were before the pandemic, but at least somewhere near there.
Sir, are you in favor of the petition to increase the minimum wage, at least in NCR? Some are filing for 470 peso increase para naman, ma-compensate yung presyo ng mga bilihin.
Well, we understand the plight of the labor sector, no? It's always finding the sweet spot. It's easier said than done, no? It's a long argument as to where the sweet spot lies na kaya ng industriya, hindi magsasara ang tindahan, kaya ng SMEs, no? And karamihan ng ating negosyo ay SMEs, di ba? Na kaya ng the negosyante doesn't go back to becoming an employee, no? Now that's bad if that happens, di ba? So we can go staggered. It's just like the increases in supermarket items. Some of them are staggered, no? Hindi naman one-time, big-time increase, no? Oil is staggered, kaya lang, itong huling nangyari this morning, medyo malaki yung malaki yung increase, no? Pero kumbaga, same with the minimum wage, we could probably go in staggered amounts, which you've done in the past, which the government has done in the past.
Thank you for that very difficult balancing act indeed. Thank you so much, Stephen Kua, President of the Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association.
Thank you, Danny. Jess?
Lawmakers are now scrambling to come up with measures to bring down those oil prices.
But the Finance Department is firm on rejecting calls to suspend the excise taxes on fuel. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez with the report.
The Senate Energy Committee under Sherwin Gatchalian called an emergency hearing with the DOE and DOF. Gatchalian wants the inventory of oil companies raised from 30 days to 45 days. But the DOE says that will do little to bring down prices since we follow international rates.
Hindi naman po kasi tayo inventory pricing, Yusek. Ang tinatawag natin market pricing. Ibig sabihin, kung ano po yung pagkakapresyohan sa international, yun po ang ini-implement natin dito.
Local oil companies also say raising the inventory requirements will require huge investments, which not all companies will be able to afford.
So if it is going to be imposed, if it's going to be mandated, it may require huge capex or even inability of some of the players to comply.
Basically, mabigat yung requirement na mag-double ka ng inventaryo aside from the working capital.
One other solution that has been proposed is unbundling. That means oil companies will have to be transparent about the breakdown of costs.
Historically, the Department of Energy sees what these additional amounts are that are added to the basic cost. We believe that we could have deductions in this regard.
But the Finance Department once again rejected calls to suspend fuel excise taxes. The DOF said it collected almost 144 billion pesos from it last year. President Duterte is meeting with the DOE and all industry representatives on Tuesday to discuss whether or not to suspend the excise taxes. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
Amid the rising fuel costs, the Energy Department says their fiscal policies aim to support the vulnerable sector only. In an interview with The Big Story, Oil Industry Management Bureau Director Rino Abad said what this means is that the policies are not aimed at lowering taxes on fuel products. But Abad revealed that they are looking to unbundle and investigate the weekly oil price adjustments implemented by gas companies.
We want to understand itong mga adjustments every week kung saan pinukuha o saan nanggagaling. And then we also want to have the power to unbundle yung mismong total pump price. We are not competent at this point in time sa batas, sa authority, to investigate, let alone require these gasoline stations to provide us the data explaining the pump price.
Coming right up after the break. Nomura has slashed its growth forecast for the Philippines this year. We'll tell you why when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us. You're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Dani Laurel.
All right, Dan, here we go again. The index plunging well below the 7,000 psychological support, but this time, no one's talking about COVID.
In fact, Jess, strangely, these levels seem to not be linked anymore to the number of cases, to the COVID situation. But like you mentioned, lowest in September 1, 2021, already yesterday. That was a 6-month low. And I have to say, the pain is not over. Gosh, 6,600 levels na, Jess. Yesterday, we were just worried that it was below 7,000. Now, that plunge is just continuing since we opened the markets this morning. So honestly, in the past 3 days, I'm not sure what the drop is already because it's been more than 4% already since Monday. Apart from this, there have been remarks from President Vladimir Putin of Russia about these talks with Ukraine. And another thing that has been rocking the markets is the weaker than expected print on the U.S. Consumer sentiment. That came out as well yesterday. According to Regina Caps, Luis Limlingan, that's really what's been rocking the markets. First Metro Investments, Tina Ulang naman says, investors are beginning to price in a growth slowdown. And she says the market will remain volatile until the impact of these higher inflation is factored in. In fact, she saw the support level at 6,700. We seem to have broken through that. Let's see whether bargain hunting ensues and brings us back above that level. But she does mention it is an opportunity for long-term investors to accumulate since these are levels we have not seen in at least 6 months. Another thing Timson Securities does say, and this is the only thing possibly linked to COVID, market participants may have also felt concerned due to the fact that there's a resurgence in the virus in China, some lockdowns there, particularly in Shenzhen. It's not just us though, Jess. According to Susquehanna International Group, they said to Bloomberg Television, the poor stock market just can't catch a break. Not just us. One check on the Brent oil prices just finally paring back a touch. That's down by $5.36 per barrel, closing in on the 100 levels. Let's see whether that will be paring back to 100 or below. The BSP, meanwhile, as we had mentioned earlier, is monitoring the pass-through impact on inflation, seeing whether they will be calibrating those appropriate actions. And again, there's still that Senate hearing that might be happening and whether there will be excise tax cuts. The Department of Finance, as we reported earlier, not supporting those excise tax cuts because it might result in foregone revenue. And finally, just a quick peek on our peso here. Finally strengthening a touch, very linked to the movement of oil prices, trading at 52.431 to the greenback. But if we take a step back and look at the year-to-date, we are still at the bottom part of the rung. We are down by close to 2.8% for the year-to-date for the Philippine peso.
Here are the other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Nomura has trimmed its growth forecast for the Philippines from 6.8% to 6.3% for 2022. This is due to the expected impact on inflation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Nomura's inflation projection for the Philippines climbed to 4.6% from the previous 2.9%. It realized this CPI will be higher than the Bangko Central's 3.7% estimate and beyond the government's 2 to 4% target.
Central says the Philippines is likely to remain insulated from the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. BSP Governor Ben Diokno pointed out the country's geographic distance and limited economic link to both Russia and Ukraine. He added that our strong macroeconomic fundamentals could soften any blow from the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Still, Diokno acknowledged that the conflict could hit global growth prospects by way of spikes in commodity prices.
PEZA is pushing for the extension of the work-from-home arrangement for IT BPO firms as fuel prices continue to soar. PEZA Director General Charito Plaza said the Fiscal Incentives Review Board should consider implementing a hybrid work arrangement as transportation is becoming more expensive for workers. The FIRB has earlier rejected PEZA's proposal to extend work-from-home arrangements until September 12 without required on-site capacity and without the risk of losing incentives. The board says employees should return to on-site work to help in economic recovery.
Small and medium enterprises are expected to have a hard time meeting the wage demands that's made amid rising commodity costs. Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion said SMEs will be unable to raise wages to the extent being demanded by the labor leaders. Concepcion said the tourism sector in particular will be challenged in meeting any wage demands as they are still recouping their pandemic-incurred losses.
Yung mas malaking korporasyon may kaya, no? Pero yung small to medium enterprises, yun mahirapan kasi sila talagang tinamaan. We have to give them time.
And that's a first look into the business day this Tuesday, March 15, 2022. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.